Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the Buncombe County Board of Education special called meeting. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I will acknowledge that Max Queen, our board member from INCA, is joining us virtually. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's by Reynolds High School.
Color attention, carry, colors, forward, march. Mark time, march. Color guard, halt. Present, colors. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carry, colors. Right, face. Forward, march.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Roll call. Pat Bryant?
Aye.
Amy Churchill?
Aye.
Amanda Simpkins?
Aye.
Max Queen?
Aye.
Cindy McMahon?
Aye.
Peggy Buchanan?
Aye.
Ann Franklin? Aye. Max had to send us the alarm, did he not? The first item on our agenda is an action agenda. And the item is the consideration of Buncombe County Schools' return to learn plans. So do I have to get a motion to approve the action agenda?
You can do an administrative presentation before a motion.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to begin with a recommendation. As the board considers a possible transition for kindergarten through 5th grade students from Plan B to Plan A on a 5-day basis, I would advocate and recommend the following. Similar to such board decisions in the past, I strongly request a minimum transition time of 1 full week to plan and communicate both internally and externally to ensure the smoothest transition possible. Furthermore, in consideration of returning K through 5 students back daily into the classroom, I would recommend a start date for kindergarten through 3rd grades to be March 8th, and ask that an additional week be provided to our schools to plan and communicate for the return of 4th and 5th graders. March 15th would then be the recommended starting date for grades 4 and 5. As you heard during our work session, bus transportation requirements continue to be a concern for our 4 intermediate schools and will require extensive planning efforts. Likewise, the 4th and 5th grade classrooms do not have the class size caps placed on them similar to K3. Again, a rationale for more extensive planning that would be needed. Finally, just a reminder to everyone that the choice for families and students to remain in remote-only instruction does not change and will be provided through the end of the school year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Baldwin. Is it time for discussion?
Madam Chair, for parliamentary procedure reasons, it would probably be a good idea to see if there's a motion and second to accept the recommendation of the superintendent. but then obviously there would be as much discussion as the board would need. It would not be inappropriate, though, if you feel like, or if the board would like to have some discussion before someone makes a motion. That, without objection, that would not be inappropriate, so that is up to you.
Madam Chair, I would move that we accept this recommendation from the superintendent in the form of a motion.
I'll second.
Well, that simplifies that. All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
I have a few comments, if I may. I spent 2.5 hours this morning at Fairview Elementary School, which I had planned to do before this meeting got called, because I figured we would be addressing this question sometime soon, and as before, it helps me to have it in my body before I make these decisions. And so I spent some good time in classrooms, and just, if you don't mind, I'd just like to share a little bit about what I noticed. First of all, I noticed that in the classes I was in, masking is going really well. It's not perfect, but it's going really well, and teachers are getting more and more adept at just smoothly reminding kids to pull it up. Or one kid in a classroom has a tendency to bite his fingernails, and the teacher keeps an eye on him, and when he does that, she reminds him to pull it up, and she scoops along with her hand sanitizer and takes care of it. And so I just was really impressed at Fairview this morning at the level of masking, hand sanitizing that I was seeing. And it gave me the opportunity to talk to teachers about how they're feeling, and not everybody, but most of the teachers I spoke to this morning were definitely ready to have all kids back in the classroom, even knowing that we are going to be sacrificing one of those 3 W's. One question I had before I went in was, would it be possible, one suggestion I keep hearing is, well, if we sort of make mini pods within classrooms, could we group kids together so that then if there's an exposure, the whole class is not exposed? And at least at Reynolds, where it's the biggest elementary school in my district, that's just not going to be possible. Within that classroom setting, we're going to be having everybody less than 6 feet apart. There was a couple of just instructional things really caught my eye and my ear. In the 2nd grade classroom, they were reading a book, which I wrote down the title because it was so good, highly recommend it. Can't remember now what the title was, but I will find it for you. Where is it? Last Stop on Market Street was the book they were reading. And the teacher was doing a great job helping the kids understand different perspectives, and that people in the same situation with the same set of facts can have really different perspectives. And she was getting the kids to pull out, okay, these 2 characters who are standing on this city street waiting for the bus in the rain, one of them is miserable because they don't have a car and they're standing in the rain, and the other one is enjoying the fact that we get to be outside and we get to ride the fire bus. And I thought, wow, that's really like what we're dealing with here. We have the same set of facts that we're working from, and yet we all come to very different conclusions about it. And then in a 4th grade class, I was very impressed with the way in which the teacher was, in a writing lesson, incorporating social and emotional learning and helping the students tease out what are the interesting words that you can use to describe what it means to feel guilty. What are the interesting words that you can use to sort of explode that feeling of being livid, which was an emotional word that one of the kids had chosen. And I was just really impressed with what was happening in the classroom, masks, hand sanitizing, learning, all of it. And the other thing that I heard at Fairview this morning and from talking to the other principals in the Reynolds District is the importance of 2 weeks, if at all possible. I know that what we have just moved and seconded here is a little bit truncated, and so it would be only 1 week for K through 3, but there is a lot of work to be done to get the schools ready for having everybody coming in all day long. We're going to have to, in some of those classrooms, take all the furniture out and put in completely different furniture to make it work. They're going to have to do a whole lot of planning, especially around transportation, as we've talked about today, not only with busing, but also managing the scheduling of the car riders, but then also keeping the kids safe while they eat. Because if we're sacrificing one of the 3 W's, you pretty much have to take off your mask in order to be able to eat. And so how are we going to spread out the kids enough for them to be able to eat safely, both breakfast and lunch? And the schools, the principals, the teachers are already thinking about this and already problem solving about how we can split classes up and so forth, but they haven't got it licked yet. And that is going to take some time. It's not something that you can just flip a switch. So it was really helpful for me to spend that time in the school today and really see and feel exactly what's going on and the extent to which in that school, and talking to the other principals, at least in my district, there does seem to be a readiness to have everybody back in the school at the elementary level. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you. And those things that you observed at Fairview are not peculiar to Fairview, but are all across this county, and people are working to do those. Our teachers and administrators are working to make those things happen for all of our students. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board members?
I'd just like to make a comment. You know, when we put the metrics in place at our last meeting, we all knew that Plan A meant minimal social distancing. We knew that there wouldn't be able to be the possibility to maintain that six-foot distances. And that is what is being indicated in our Strong Schools Toolkit that's being put out by NCDHHS. All over the county, all over our state, and all over our country, there are students back in Plan A, and they're doing it effectively and they're doing it safely. We know that our students need this. Our students are really struggling. Our families are struggling. And I feel strongly that this motion that's been put on the table is a good one and one that we need to move forward with.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, if I could add something that maybe helps
Sure.
for some who may have some reservation as it relates to the mask. So as I've done some research and some reading, the mask mandate was the distancing recommendations was the first thing that came out last year. That was quick, as all of us as medical folks were trying to learn what's going on here with the pandemic. It was quick in the grocery stores. It was quick at Walmart. That was one of the first things, and it was based upon previous medical research related to keeping that distance. How far does what comes out of my mouth go? How far does it travel? Not all the time, but that was where that number had come from previous research to come up with that 6-foot distance. All of that research that had been done previously, not in a pandemic, but previously, was based upon no masks. Okay? No masks. It didn't have anything to do with masking. And the data that I've read is indicating anywhere, depending on which study you look at, from 68, 70% to almost 90% improvement in reduction of risk when there's some distancing, even if it's less than 6 feet, provided we have the mask. And I don't think anybody on this board has advocated for us taking the mask away. I know I haven't. The World Health Organization's recommendation is a 3-foot distance. Our data from our toolkit says that Plan A for K through 5 we can make work, and it's happening, as Ms. Simpkins just said, not only here but in other places around the country. I don't want to sacrifice any of the other things that we've done. And as I said earlier, Dr. Baldwin, if there's some value and benefit to going back to doing some screening on buses before kids get into school, I'm all for that. But what we do know is happening is the absences that I had Mr. Earwood give me from first semester, greater than 10 days in Buncombe County Schools, 1,830 elementary, greater than 961. We know there's loss of literacy. We know meals are getting missed. Even when we send meals home, we don't know who eats that food when it gets home, other kids in the household, et cetera. There's a lot of things for our youngest kids that they're not getting the advantage of, that putting them back, even at this date, or the dates recommended, hopefully will begin the process of transitioning to a point where we begin to not only for them, but hopefully for all of our students at some point, get them all back into school and back to what we know the data shows is the best way for us to educate our kids. So I would strongly encourage this board to adopt this motion as presented. I would prefer, as one of the principals in my district recommended, to just take the Band-Aid off and have them all come in together. But I can understand, Dr. Baldwin, where you're coming from and needing some more time on the 4th and 5th. I get that. So I'm comfortable with the 2 different starts and getting that going. And so I will support this motion and hope this board will as well. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from board members? Then I will ask that we vote. I have a motion. I have a motion and a second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would you just double check that Mr. Queen, I don't know if he's hearing everything.
I appreciate
Since he's not here, just to make sure he didn't have something he wanted to add. And I don't know if he does. But.
Thank you. Mr. Queen, do you have questions?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay.
Everything that's been said, I am in agreement with. And the only caveat that I would have to add this is a first step in returning to Plan A. And as soon as the criteria changes that would allow us to consider the grades 6 through 12, I think we need to aggressively look at that and get that rolled out as quickly as possible. That's all I'll say at this point.
Thank you. We'll work toward that. All right, that being said, I'm
Madam
going to
Chair, I have a question for our superintendent. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to ask him
sorry.
earlier at the work session. I know I had mentioned to you, and I think you were going to get the information. Like Mr. Bryant mentioned, there's the World Health Organization has mentioned 3 feet as being a safe distance, and I had asked you what that looked like for our schools. If that's something that our schools are able to maintain in K through 5, or the percentage, or.
Is that for Dr. Baldwin?
Yeah, it is. I think he's the one that's got the information.
And you're asking me what?
Do our K-5 classrooms have the ability to do the 3 feet spacing?
I think on average, I would feel comfortable saying across this district, but everyone needs to hear me loud and clear. I've got 42 school buildings and campuses. Every one of them is different. There's 50-plus years apart in age of those buildings. The size of the classrooms is only one component of that. It's all about numbers. We will have to use our time wisely, as Ms. McMahon said, to prepare for this, regardless of who comes in that buildings, because numbers can change again. Mm-hmm. Remember, in a classroom, it's all about numbers. The percentages have already changed in terms of those children selecting to remain remote only. There's a 10% difference since prior to the holiday. I don't know those numbers, and I certainly could not give you an average on those numbers yet. Those remain to be seen. What I can guarantee you is that each and every one of our administrators and our staff, I feel 100% sure, will do their very best to maximize the spacing in their classrooms. But is there any guarantee? Is there any promise that it'll be 3 feet, 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, 2 feet? No, I can't go there. I think that would be unreasonable.
Well, and I guess that's why, too, we're even discussing Plan A, because that would mean that we are, giving up that third W, and Plan A under the North Carolina toolkit does allow for that. So I just was curious because, again, for me, it does all go back to that spacing and the importance of the 3 Ws and being the ultimate additive for complete safety in our situation. I guess the other question I had, and we were talking about, how to talk about eating. Has there been any talk about offering up the cafeterias to be open to maybe spread out for eating?
Oh, absolutely, and it goes beyond cafeterias. Mm-hmm. On pretty days like we had today, for example, Your cafeteria may become outside.
I noticed a lot of picnic tables at TC when I was there Friday.
Gymnasiums, auditoriums. I think that and that again is the challenge and the need for the additional time, because you're going to have to look at it class by class, grade by grade, and it's all about the numbers. And it's not only numbers of students and spacing in those rooms, it has to do with the spacing of your entire building. That's the puzzle that has to be all put together, and that puzzle varies from one school to another. And I certainly respect those comments, Ms. Churchill. But what I do want to read is what, and I reference this as the Bible for us, and this is the February 2nd update. And if you recall, when we first visited this at the beginning of the school year, this language was not here in writing. But let me read it. Kindergarten through 5th grade students should return to in-person instruction 5 days per week to the fullest extent possible while following all public health protocols in the Strong Schools NC Toolkit, with one exception. Schools serving children kindergarten through 5th grade do not need to adhere to the 6-foot social distancing requirements detailed in this toolkit. Now again, that does not mean it says that we do not have to adhere. It certainly doesn't state that we do not need to continue to keep that as our goal, because that 6 foot's been a key number since March of last year. So we will do our very best, but it's all about the classroom size. It's all about the numbers.
I heard another good suggestion from a teacher this morning, going back to that point, Dr. Baldwin, that teachers have, from the beginning of this school year, been emphasizing 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, spreading everybody out, teaching kids how far is 6 feet, and just hitting it over and over and over. And now all of a sudden, we're going to flip the switch and not be able to say that anymore. And if I'm a 3rd grader, I'm going to say, well, what's changed? How come last week 6 feet was everything and now it's not? And this teacher's point was it would be really helpful to have some county-wide messaging that we can use with parents, with kids, to explain why it's different now. And it is very different now from my perspective than it was back in January or even after Thanksgiving. With the numbers being so much lower, it does seem safer to be able to be closer together. But I think that was a good suggestion, that we have some kind of language to help teachers, not that we're dictating what people have to say by any means, but to help teachers and administrators and so forth to explain it to kids about why we're making this change now. Talking points, yeah.
I think that's a very good point. In fact, we had an opportunity to meet with all of our principals in the district yesterday, and one thing that we committed to them was a list. Mr. Huff's going to lead that in terms of best practices, a checklist. We've got some very good minds and experienced administrators on our district leadership, and so that's certainly something we will work on, along with Ms. Harris, who's already taken notes back there in terms of communication. So I think that's a very good suggestion.
And Dr. Baldwin, I would add, and I'm sure Ms. Harris is probably going there, it seems like much longer ago than just last summer, August, but I thought our communications folks did really good videos that involved some of our students that were shared with us prior to going into the school year, and I don't have anything except anecdotal data from people that talked about it. Those were helpful for folks, and maybe there's a way to do some of that again as well. Seems like much longer ago than just 6-8 months, but it really was then.
And can I just make one other comment then, and I'll be done, because I feel like I need to explain why I will be voting against. And it's not because I don't think that our county can't do these things safely. I appreciate you saying that the North Carolina Schools Toolkit is the Bible that we use. And to top that off, though, even more importantly, is that finally the CDC has come out with guidelines that school boards all over the country have been asking for. They don't mesh with what the North Carolina school toolkits are saying. So I, as a school board member, have to make a decision on what I can live with as a school board member. And so for me, that is that I choose to follow the CDC current guidelines, which unfortunately says that we should not be in a Plan A at this time. And it actually really bothers me to have to say that, because our county was looking so good and so favorable, and the metrics have definitely trended in the right direction. But I've always, trusted the CDC. I believe strongly in the science that they use, and so for me, that's just the reason for my vote for no. But it's not to say that I do not support the school system and know that, yes, indeed, you will do everything you can to maintain that safety.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, can I make one more comment?
Sure.
Another thing that I heard this morning that really resonated with me was about fairness. And unfortunately, fairness just doesn't mean the same thing in the pandemic as it does the rest of the year, I think, or the rest of the time. But we're really, as we move into Plan A, we're going to have to, as Dr. Baldwin said, do it class by class, school by school, and it's going to have to look different in different schools. Because in my district, for instance, Bell Elementary is very different as a small school than Fairview is as a really big school. And they're going to be able to do things differently. They're going to have to do things differently. And that's going to affect teachers, and teachers are going to find out that it's being done differently at a different school, and that may not feel great. And I just want to say that I understand that discomfort with the perceived lack of consistency across the school system, but we're going to have to do what works best at each school. And I think that is going to be kind of the number one priority as we move into this.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more strongly. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask that we vote on the motion to accept the recommendation given by our superintendent. And that would be first, Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
No.
Amanda Simpkins.
Aye.
Max Queen.
Aye.
Cindy McMahon.
Aye.
Peggy Buchanan. Aye. Ann Franklin. Aye. Motion carries. All right. So now we adjourn?
Madam Chair, just for the public, Dr. Bowen, I know you said this, but maybe folks weren't listening. Could you just reiterate to the public that this does not impact those kids who have chosen to be all virtual? It doesn't change anything in our middle and high schools from our what we are currently doing on Wednesdays and where we are with everything else. I think it would be good for the public to hear that from our superintendent that that's still in place.
I'll be more than happy to reiterate that. For those parents, those students that have chosen, they could have chosen that at the beginning of the school year, remote only. That particular status for them does not change. This decision regarding transition for K-5 does not change. They'll be continued to provide the best quality instruction that we can provide to them.
Our 6 through 13, AB, Wednesdays, all of those types of things that are asynchronous.
6 through 13 remains under Plan B. We identified Wednesdays. We gave the board a report of a lot of activity, a lot of individualized support, and I think that's going to continue to expand. Those Wednesdays are very busy days for our teachers. I think as we look at especially our 6 through 13, the demands of those teachers, they are serving several different masters in terms of what the student status is. So those will remain the same.
Thank you.
All right. So the motion has carried, and now I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
I would second that for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now we have to roll call again. Pat Bryant,
Aye.
Amy Churchill,
Aye.
Amanda Simpkins,
Aye.
Max Queen,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Peggy Buchanan.
Aye.
Ann Franklin. Aye. We stand adjourned. Our next board meeting will be March the 4th at 5:30 PM in this room. It is a regular meeting. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.